I think that if we want to live, if we want to talk about the future, if we want peace in the world, we can't leave it up to the White House. We can't leave it up to someone who doesn't seem to get it, who doesn't know that he can't play cowboy with our lives. It's time for us to take charge. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here to talk about the most important issue confronting this country today. We're here today to provide some leadership. Each of you who are present here today are in a leadership role. You're in a leadership role because we've got to do some work to help educate the people of this country about what is really taking place. People believe that if we kind of stay there, we can help get Iraq settled, we can help bring democracy. And some people get very discouraged when they see this latest poll that talks about 60% of the people, despite the fact they don't think we should be there. They don't think that this war has been handled properly. 60% of the people think that perhaps we should stay there a little bit longer so that we can get democracy implanted in Iraq, and we can help stabilize the country, and we can bring together the Shiites and the Sunnis and the Kurds. Ladies and gentlemen, that's American optimism. That's American optimism because people support democracy. They want to see it for everybody all over the country, and the president keeps getting on the tube talking about how we're winning and how we're bringing democracy to Iraq and how we're going to change the way of life. Well, the American people have great hope that that's going to happen. But those of us who have been paying close attention, who are watching everything that's going on, we know that this president is on the wrong track, leading the people in the wrong direction, making them to think that somehow when they complete this Constitution and they vote on this Constitution, everything is going to be all right. It is not true. It is absolutely not true. The fact of the matter is, President Bush cannot go to Iraq and say to the Shiites, oh, we know the Sunnis were in charge even though they were in smaller numbers and you were in the majority, and that Saddam was basically allowing for the control by the Sunnis that just don't matter. Write them into the Constitution and share the power and everything is going to be all right. And Kurds, you know, what are you thinking about? You got to get along. What's the matter? Can't you all get along? Just come together with this Constitution we're forcing you to finish by August 15th. I knew it wasn't going to get done on August 15th. That's my birthday, and I knew it was not going to happen. The spirits work better than that. I knew it was not going to happen, and I knew with all of the urging and encouraging and pushing and forcing that was being done, because the president needs to tell the American people he's got some kind of a victory, that it was not going to be done. And no matter what they say and what we would like to do, and despite the optimism of the United States and people here who would like to see democracy everywhere, when we leave, they're going to divide it up. And there's nothing we can do about it. There's nothing that we can do about it, because history tells us that the differences are great. For example, just take a look at what is being contemplated about how to deal with women in the Constitution, where they will have the Islamic law prevail and religious courts deciding some of the most important decisions about women's lives. It tells you that this business of implanting this democracy as we see it is not going to happen. This president has done nothing to make us safer and more secure. This president has taken advantage of one of the most unfortunate incidents in the history of this country, and he's used it to lead us into this war. You know, many of us in the Congress of the United States, all of us in the House except one brave woman, voted to give the president the power to go after those responsible for 9/11. We thought he had some clues. We thought he had a vision. We thought that he was going to track Osama bin Laden down, and that he was going to crack Al-Qaeda, and that he was going to make not only the United States more safer, but join with people around the world to get rid of terrorism. We didn't know that he was going to take the unfortunate incident of 9/11 and focus on Saddam Hussein and make him the poster boy for 9/11 and terrorism in the world, not find Osama bin Laden, not do anything about terrorism, and then have a Homeland Security Department with some czar who tells you to go out and buy some flashlights and some plastic paper so that you could be safer. Oh, I forgot, he had duct tape in it also. And so we knew that Saddam Hussein had done some terrible things. We didn't like it when he invaded Kuwait, but the president used that image and the knowledge that we had that Saddam Hussein was kind of a tyrant. And what he did was he took this image and the knowledge about him and translated that into the poster child, the poster boy, the poster man, or whatever, for this war, created this war, pounded himself on the chest, started to talk about the axis of evil, said all kinds of things, and people kind of went along. We voted to give him the power to go after the perpetrators of 9/11. Barbara Lee had good sense. She knew that it would be misused. She stood up and she did not vote. And those of us who believed him and now understand very thoroughly there are no weapons of mass destruction, that Saddam was left but a paper tiger, no threat to the United States, no threat to anybody. We have now joined hands. We formed the Out of Iraq Caucus. We're joining hands with people across the globe to bring our soldiers home, to stop this immoral, illegitimate war. And this is one of the most important discussions that we can have. It is important, number one, because we should not be in this war. But it is important because, for some reason, it appears that the American public had been lulled to sleep for a long time, far too long. And this is a democracy that we live in. We have a constitution that gives us the right and the power to talk about what we like and what we don't like. The power to challenge the government of the United States, to raise questions. Oh, I know. This administration does not like you raising questions. They would say that those of us who challenge on this war are unpatriotic. We're not unpatriotic. We not only support our soldiers, many of them who are there because they're patriotic and they went there answering the call of their president. Many of them didn't have jobs and they wanted a chance to change their lives. They wanted a chance to earn some money, have a paycheck, and to come back. And maybe, just maybe in America, buy a house. Just maybe get that dichondra lawn and that camp and that computer. Just maybe to live the American dream. But they have been tricked. And they have been fooled, and now they're raising questions. Raising questions about, why are we really here? What are we accomplishing? What do we do when we go into Fallujah and they say shoot anything that moves? What is this Operation Lightning? What are we doing and who are we killing and why are civilians dying that had nothing to do with any of this? Really, many of them don't want to be a part of this. And so not only are the soldiers beginning to raise questions, the families are beginning to raise questions. I went to Crawford, Texas to see my friend, Cindy Sheehan. I went to be with the mother who's still grieving about her son Casey. I went to Camp Casey to honor him and to honor her. I went to Camp Casey to say to Cindy, you're a courageous woman, and you will be the catalyst for helping to direct this country out of that war. She is a courageous woman. We should give her a big round of applause and send our blessings and our thoughts to her. Casey is one of that 1,860-something soldiers who have lost their lives, and over 13,000 who have been injured. And I'm not talking about scratches. I'm talking about young men and women who are losing limbs, who are losing their eyes, who have serious injuries, who may never realize a decent quality of life because of their service in this Iraq war. I'm talking about young men and women who are in the military hospitals trying to learn how to use these artificial limbs that are being given to them. Young men and women, oftentimes, who don't even know where they're going to live once they're released. Are we getting the true numbers about those who are being killed? I'm told, somebody said to me on more than one occasion, that when the soldiers are injured and they go to Germany for treatment, if they die, they are not in the numbers that we're getting. We need to find out this information. And ladies and gentlemen, I've been asked about it enough. The President of the United States won't answer it. I'm going to Germany, to those hospitals. I'm going to find out. I'm going to find out what is going on. We're going to have to do a lot of research and digging and investigation without the help of this administration. We're going to have to roll up our sleeves, go where we have to go, do what we must do, not only to find out the truth about what is going on, but to help relieve the minds of our citizens about what is going on. The Downing Street Memorandum. It has been alluded to when I first came up here today by Donna, and that has become a focus of this resistance to this occupation in Iraq by many of us in the Congress of the United States. John Conyers held a wonderful hearing. The day of the hearing, as you know, the opposite side of the aisle would not grant us a proper hearing room. We met in the basement in a room that was much too small, but we made do with what we had because we were not about to have our voices silenced because of lack of adequate space. We met, and this hearing was headed by John Conyers, but I think over 35 or 40 members joined with them in the hearing. And we had wonderful panelists who were there, raising questions, sharing information. The ambassador, Wilson, who had the strength and the courage to challenge this administration. They thought they could send him to Niger and have him come back with what they wanted him to come back with. He said the yellow cake is not there. They did not produce yellow cake. They did not do it, and the administration did not like it. And so they went after his wife, Valerie Plame, and they outed her. They put her in a position where she could be in great danger. But that's typical of the tactics of this administration. Say what you have to say, do what you have to do, no matter how big the lie, no matter how dastardly the act, do it in order to stay in control and try and keep the American people not knowing what you're really doing. And that's why we've got to do so much in investigating what is going on. Now, in addition to what I'm talking about, we're trying to find out more information about injured soldiers and soldiers who die offshore. We need to meet with some of our British counterparts. And we need to go to London We need to go to Britain. We need to meet with them about these Downing Street memorandums, and we need to talk with those who are willing to expose and who are trying to expose what has been taking place with these memorandums so that we can get on one track and we can continue to give to the American people the real information. The Downing Street memo is one of 7 pre-war memos written by senior British officials prior to the war, which began on March 19, 2003. The most discussed memo is the Downing Street memo, which was written on July 23, 2003, 8 months before the war began. It summarizes a meeting between Prime Minister Tony Blair and several of his top policy aides. The memo says, and I'll try and quote some of this, says that head of the British Foreign Intelligence Service, that's the British equivalent of the CIA, thought that military action was seen as inevitable, that Bush wanted to remove Saddam Hussein through military action justified by the conjunction of terrorism and weapons of mass destruction. However, the intelligence and facts were being fixed around the policy. He wanted to go to war, and he wanted to use weapons of mass destruction, but he had to make the intelligence information fit what he wanted to do. And that's why you saw all of this business about it was the CIA, it was the FBI. No, it was the CIA. It was Bush. It was Bush. That's who it was. It was Bush. Not only was it Bush, it was the other neocons around him, including Condoleezza Rice. There was little discussion, the memo said, there was little discussion in Washington of the aftermath of military action. They didn't care. Somebody raised a question about, well, Colin Powell did at one time have a teeny bit of courage and attempted to ask the question about what if you invade, what if you occupy. He said, if you do, it belongs to you. But they shut him up real fast, didn't they? Sent him up to the UN and put him on the front line to show the pictures of weapons of mass destruction, the sheds that they were being produced in. Well, after that, he had no credibility. He had no credibility. He knew better. He knew that there were no weapons of mass destruction being manufactured in those buildings, but he did it. Well, they've gotten rid of him. That's another one of them gone who lied to the American public. So, there was little discussion in Washington of the aftermath of military action. You know, this president rolled out with his phony jumpsuit on, rolled out with the big banner, mission accomplished. He put us in great danger when he did that, because the so-called insurgents said, now let the war begin. And even though we went into Baghdad with the shock and awe campaign, with all of the military might of the most powerful country in the world, we thought we had shut it down. We thought shock and awe had been what we needed to get rid of Saddam, to just tear it all up, take it over, including the oil fields. Take it over. And they promised us, after they tore it up, that they would get the proceeds from the oil that they would drill in order to rebuild the infrastructure. Another lie. Not only has that not happened, they can't even keep the oil equipment working, because the same insurgents who said let the war begin also said, and you won't get any oil because we're going to blow them up every day if we have to. We're not safer. We're not safer. Nobody likes us any better because we went into Iraq. We're less safe, and we're less secure, and we have more people who are hating us, disliking us, and thinking we're using this awesome power in a very irresponsible way. And I want to tell you how it's reflected, not only in the kind of statements that I quoted to you from Chirac, but just recently in the discussion about Iran. the president said that we may have to go to war, that war was an option. What happened in Germany? The chancellor rolled out and said, oh, no, it's not. Said it is not an option. They jumped on it right away. Not only do we have the job and the responsibility of bringing our soldiers home, stopping this war in Iraq, we've got to be about the business of stopping the other potential wars in the region. We've got to be about providing leadership to say, if we want to deal with Iran, if we're worried about the development of nuclear, don't roll out and talk about how bad we are and how we're going to stop you. We tried that with Kim Jong-il over in North Korea. He said, come on. He said, I've had nuclear and I will use it. So what do we want to do? Do we want to keep getting in the faces of sovereign countries who we don't have any relationships with to begin with? Do we think we can take on Iran and Syria at the same time while we're trying to occupy Iraq and we got soldiers dying up in Afghanistan? Give me a break. It is time for the American people to say, no, we will not go down like that. This war is an unfortunate one, but it provides us with the opportunity to be Americans again who believe in the Constitution, who believe that we have some power, who believe that we have the right to have a government for the people and by the people. Let's take advantage of this opportunity. Let's show what America really stands for. Ladies and gentlemen, we may have some of the most awesome weaponry in the world. And of course we have nuclear capability. But so does Pakistan. So does India. So does China. So does Israel. So what happens? We're going to have a nuclear holocaust? No. I don't think that's the way to go. I think that if we want to live, if we want to talk about the future, if we want peace in the world, we can't leave it up to the White House. We can't leave it up to someone who doesn't seem to get it, who doesn't know that he can't play cowboy with our lives. It's time for us to take charge. And so I think the polls are right, and they're going in the right direction. The polls are showing again, and I'll reiterate, that the people don't like the war. They don't feel that we should have gone in. They feel that we should not have gone in the first place. They feel that it has not been handled correctly. And they would like to have the soldiers return. But what the next step that we have in trying to work with bringing more people into this discussion is the fact that we have an appreciation for the belief and the optimism and the desire to see democracy. But we've got to get over this kind of spinning that's being done by the White House, where they tell you it's right around the corner. It's not around the corner, and we must face it. We do have some responsibilities, and we can exercise some of the responsibilities of helping the Iraqis get back on their feet, but it doesn't mean that we're going to have permanent bases in Iraq. Today you have come for this discussion. This must happen all over America. We must create the town halls. We must create the discussions. We must be willing to talk about what's wrong with this policy. We must always let folks know that we're not against the soldiers. It's not about that at all. And we must not allow them to describe us in that way. We must say over and over again, we support them, we want them home. And when they come home, we're going to support their right to have a decent quality of life. We are still We are still working on trying to make it right for soldiers who went to war in Vietnam and who returned and who are living homeless on the streets of America. We're still trying to make it right for soldiers who became drug addicted, who still are not getting services in this country. We're trying to make it right for the homeless and the drug addicted. And in Desert Storm, we still have victims who came back as a result of being in that atmosphere, who are ill, who can't get services from the VA. And so we know what war does. We know that it made it right of our veterans. And we don't want to continue to happen. But most of all, we want to be the country of justice and freedom and equality for all. We want to provide leadership in the world for what is right. We don't want to look like the bullies who run over folks. We don't want to look like we're going into other people's country simply for their resources, their oil. We don't want to look like we don't care once we go into Afghanistan, that the Taliban is still operating, and we turn our backs and let the poppy fields flow. We don't want to look like we're turning our backs on what's going up on that border between Pakistan and Afghanistan. We know what's happening. We're in a mess, you all. This president has gotten us into one of the worst messes we could be in. And we've got to say, no, George W. Bush, we won't stand for it. I love my grandson, as other grandmothers love their grandchildren. We love our children. We don't want to see them die in Iraq or any place else that we don't understand. We don't know why they're there. I'm no shrinking violet. There may be some time when we have to defend our right for freedom in the world. I don't shrink from that. This is not the time. This is not it. They can't even make it look like that's it. And so, I say to you, just as President Bush loves his 2 daughters, we love our children. He's not asking them to go to war. Don't ask us to send ours. Thank you very much.